The Tyrellian Trade Summit was exactly the kind of event Ethan Cross had learned to navigate carefully. Elaborate displays of wealth and power, complex social hierarchies, and nobles who measured worth through very specific and narrow definitions of strength. Baron Vel'thar Kyrenis stood at the summit's center, surrounded by lesser nobles who hung on his every word. He was impressive in the way that Tyrellian warriors were impressive, 7 feet tall, scales marked with battle honors, presence that demanded attention through combination of biology and cultural authority. He'd been mocking humans for the past 20 minutes, not subtly, openly questioning whether humans understood Tyrellian values, whether they had the strength to be true partners, whether their soft philosophies about cooperation and mutual benefit meant anything in real power dynamics. Ethan had been ignoring it professionally. He was here to negotiate trade agreements, not to defend humanity's honor in some dick-measuring contest with an aristocrat who needed to feel superior. But Baron Vel'thar apparently wasn't satisfied with being ignored. "Human," he called out, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Ethan Cross, you've been very quiet. Do you have nothing to say about Tyrellian philosophy?" Every head turned. Ethan recognized the game. He could stay silent and appear weak, or respond and give the Baron ammunition. No good options. "I have thoughts," Ethan said calmly. "I'm not sure they're what you want to hear." "Speak freely." "I'm curious about human perspectives on strength and worth." Ethan stood, meeting the Baron's eyes directly. "I think strength comes in many forms. Physical prowess is one form. Intellectual capability is another. Emotional resilience, creative thinking, the ability to build rather than just dominate, all of these are strengths." He paused. "I think dismissing other perspectives and measuring everything by a single narrow standard is its own kind of weakness. It blinds you to value you might otherwise recognize." The chamber went quiet. Several nobles made sounds that Ethan's cultural training identified as shock. You didn't contradict Baron Vel'thar directly, especially not by calling his worldview weak. The Baron's expression went cold. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, Predator's smile that meant Ethan had just walked into something. "How philosophical," Vel'thar said. "You believe worth can be found in unexpected places, that my people are too narrow in our judgments." He looked around the assembled nobles. "Let's test that theory." Ethan's instinct screamed danger. "I have a daughter," Vel'thar continued, "Lady Lyria Kyrenis. She was once promising, brilliant military mind, exceptional warrior in training. But 2 years ago she was injured, badly. Our medicine couldn't fully repair the damage. She can't walk properly, can't fight, can't fulfill the roles our culture values." He said it with the casual cruelty of someone discussing broken equipment. "I have declared her worthless to my house. She lives in isolation, forgotten." "A failure," the nobles murmured. Everyone clearly knew this story. "If you truly believe worth can be found anywhere human, then prove it." Vel'thar's smile widened. "I will give you my daughter, a gift from my house to yours. If you can find value in what I have discarded, then perhaps your philosophy has merit. But when you fail, when you realize some things truly are broken beyond use, you will acknowledge that Tyrellian judgment is superior to human sentiment." The court laughed. It was a brilliant trap, cruel and humiliating. If Ethan refused, he'd prove he was all talk about finding value in unexpected places. If he accepted, he'd be stuck with someone the Baron had publicly declared worthless, and when the arrangement failed, it would validate everything Vel'thar believed about human weakness. Ethan looked at the Baron, at the assembled nobles watching for his reaction, at the political game being played with someone's daughter as the punchline. He thought about everything he'd learned about Tyrellian culture, about how their warrior society treated anyone who couldn't meet physical standards, about what 2 years of being called worthless by your own father would do to a person. "I accept," he said clearly. The laughter died. People looked uncertain. Had he actually agreed? "I accept your daughter as a companion and colleague," Ethan continued, his voice steady. Not because I need to prove anything about her worth. She has that already. The only thing I'll prove is that your judgment is worthless." The chamber went completely silent. Baron Vel'thar's expression flickered, surprise, then rage, then careful control. "Bold words. We'll see if you can support them." He gestured dismissively. "She's yours, a gift from my house. May you enjoy your broken prize, human. I look forward to your inevitable admission of failure." Ethan bowed with exactly the minimum respect protocol required. "I look forward to proving you wrong about everything." They brought him to the isolated wing the next day. It was technically part of Baron Vel'thar's estate, but clearly designed to hide things away, distant from the main household minimal staff, the architectural equivalent of sweeping something under a rug. The servant who'd escorted him bowed and left quickly, like staying near this place was uncomfortable. Ethan knocked on the main door, waited, knocked again. "Enter." The voice was female, flat, the tone of someone who'd learned not to care about anything. The quarters were adequate, comfortable furniture, proper amenities, but sterile, like a very nice storage unit. No personal touches. Nothing that suggested someone actually lived here rather than existed. She sat near a window, using a mobility chair, Tyrellian technology that provided movement for those with leg or spine injuries. He recognized it from cultural briefings. Also knew it was heavily stigmatized in warrior society as a symbol of weakness and failure. Lady Lyria Kyrenis was in her mid-20s by human equivalent. Silver-blue skin characteristic of Tyrellian nobility, long ears swept back and adorned with simple jewelry, scales bearing faint scars that medical technology had repaired as well as it could. She wore simple robes, functional, but devoid of the elaborate styling nobles usually preferred. Her expression was carefully blank, like someone who'd learned not to feel because feeling hurt too much. "You're the human my father gave away," she said flatly. "Like property, how humiliating for you." Ethan entered and sat across from her without asking permission, treating the space as hers to control, not his to dominate. "I'm Ethan Cross, and I wasn't given you. Your father created a situation where we're both stuck together. There's a difference." She studied him with eyes that had learned to expect cruelty. "He expects you to fail, to realize I'm worthless and send me back, proving humans are all sentiment and no substance. Your father is an ass who measures worth by a very narrow definition of strength." Ethan said it matter-of-factly. "His expectations aren't my problem." That got a reaction. Her carefully blank expression cracked slightly with surprise. "You're very direct." "I find it saves time." He looked around the quarters. "Is this where you want to be? Or were you confined here?" "I was confined. After my injuries, my father declared me worthless, put me here, out of sight." She said it without emotion, like reporting facts. "There's nowhere else for someone like me in his house." "Then let's change that." Ethan leaned forward. "I'm going to be direct about something else. I don't know what you've been told, but I'm not here to fix you or overcome your disability or any of that savior garbage. You're a person. That's not debatable. What is debatable is whether we can figure out a living arrangement that doesn't make both of us miserable." Lyria stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. "You're not here to prove my father wrong about me. I'm here because your father is a manipulative bastard who tried to trap me in a no-win situation. Whether you're worthless or not isn't something I need to prove. You're a person. That's the baseline. Everything else is details." For the first time, something like genuine emotion crossed her face, confusion mixed with fragile hope. "I don't understand. You were a military strategist, right, before your injuries?" She blinked at the subject change. "I studied strategy, political theory, interstellar relations. I was being groomed for command before," she gestured at her legs, "before I failed." "Your legs failed, not you. Difference." Ethan pulled out his datapad. "I'm negotiating a trade agreement with the Kelvorian Consortium. Complex political dynamics, multiple competing interests. I could use strategic analysis from someone who understands Tyrellian military thinking and interstellar political frameworks. Interested? You want my help? Genuine surprise. I want expert analysis. You're an expert. The fact that you use a mobility chair doesn't change your brain. She looked at him for a long moment, clearly waiting for the cruelty, the mockery, the revelation that this was another joke at her expense. When it didn't come, she said quietly, "I'll need to review the background materials. I'll send them over tonight." The analysis Lyria provided was brilliant. 10 pages of dense strategic thinking that identified vulnerabilities and opportunities Ethan had completely missed. She'd approached it like a military campaign, understanding not just the economics but the political motivations, the cultural factors, the leverage points that could move the entire negotiation. Ethan implemented her suggestions. They worked perfectly. The Calvorian deal closed on terms that benefited everyone. When asked about his success, Ethan credited Lyria openly. Lady Lyria identified the leverage points that made this work. Her understanding of interstellar political dynamics is exceptional. Word spread. The human was working with Baron Vel'thar's broken daughter. Some dismissed it, humans were soft, they coddle weakness. Others were curious. What could she possibly contribute? Ethan didn't hide their collaboration. He brought her analysis to meetings, cited her work explicitly, treated her insights with the same respect he'd give any expert consultant. The first time he asked her to attend a meeting in person, Lyria was terrified. "I haven't appeared in public since my father declared me worthless," she said. "People will mock me. People might, I won't. And anyone who wants to work with me will learn to respect you quickly or find themselves excluded." Ethan said it simply. "You're my strategic advisor. That's a position of respect and influence. You've earned it through the quality of your work. That's what matters." She attended, used her mobility chair without apology because Ethan treated it as completely normal, just how she moved, no different than him walking. When nobles stared or whispered, Ethan ignored them and deferred to Lyria's expertise genuinely. Gradually, through consistent respect and actual inclusion, Lyria began reclaiming herself. Her strategic mind had never stopped working during her isolation. She'd just been silenced. Now she was being heard. She started proposing new trade frameworks, identifying political opportunities, analyzing situations with the brilliance that had made her promising before her injuries. Ethan ensured she got credit for every success, not as his project or his validation, as her own accomplishments. But it wasn't just professional. He arranged for her quarters to be relocated to better areas of the estate, not under his authority but under hers as someone deserving respect. When she mentioned missing music, something she'd loved before her father had cut her off from everything, Ethan found Tyrellian musicians and arranged private performances. When she talked about feeling ugly because of her scars and her chair, Ethan responded honestly. "You're one of the most impressive people I've met. Your father taught you to measure worth by warrior standards, something you can't meet because of your injuries. I'm teaching you to measure worth by actual impact on the world. By that standard, you're extraordinary." The transformation wasn't instant. 2 years of shame and isolation don't heal overnight. But consistent respect, valued abilities, genuine inclusion, it gradually rebuilt her. 6 months in, during a strategy session, Lyria said something that made Ethan stop. "I used to pray for my father to acknowledge me again, to tell me I still had worth." She looked at her hands. "Now I realize I was asking the wrong person. His acknowledgement doesn't matter. What matters is that I acknowledge myself." "That's growth," Ethan said quietly. "That's your influence." She met his eyes. "You've never pitied me, never treated me as broken, just as someone with abilities that deserve to be used. That consistency, it changed how I see myself. I'm glad, but you did the work. I just refuse to accept someone else's bullshit judgment of you." She smiled genuine warmth. "Well, thank you for your refusal." The crisis came during a major territorial dispute between three star systems. All three had claims to a resource-rich border region. Tensions were escalating toward war, something that would devastate the entire sector's economy and cost thousands of lives. The Tyrellian Empire was being pressured to choose sides. Baron Vel'thar and his fellow military nobles were debating which alliance to form, which military commitment to make. Every option led to conflict. Ethan and Lyria analyzed the situation from a different angle. She identified something the warriors had missed. The dispute wasn't really about territory. It was about resource distribution and economic anxiety. The systems were fighting over resources they thought were scarce, but strategic trade partnerships could address the actual needs without conflict. Lyria developed a comprehensive framework, complex trade agreements that gave each system access to what they needed while preserving everyone's territorial dignity. It was brilliant, elegant, and completely outside how Tyrellian military minds approach problems. "We should present this to the council," Ethan said. "They won't listen to me." Lyria's fear was immediate and real. "I'm the Baron's broken daughter. Who will take me seriously? Your Lady Lyria Kyrenis, the strategic analyst who solved a dozen complex negotiations. That's who they'll see if we present this right." "My father will object violently." "Your father's objections are his problem. This framework could prevent a war. That's more important than his ego." They presented it to the Tyrellian Council. The Empire's most powerful nobles gathered to decide policy. The initial reaction was skepticism turning to hostility when they realized Baron Vel'thar's disgraced daughter was speaking. "You dare bring her before this council?" The Baron's voice was venomous. "She has no standing, no. She has standing as the person who developed the framework we're presenting," Ethan interrupted. "If you're more interested in her personal history than in preventing a war, that says more about your priorities than hers." Lyria took a breath and began presenting. Her analysis was thorough, her strategic thinking clear. She addressed every objection with facts and logic that the military leaders couldn't counter. Baron Vel'thar tried multiple times to shut her down, but other nobles were genuinely interested. The framework worked. It solved their problem without military conflict. After 3 hours of debate, the council voted to adopt Lyria's framework. It succeeded. 3 systems avoided war through economic partnership instead of military alliance. Thousands of lives saved. Economic stability preserved. And Lady Lyria Kyrenis became known as the architect of peace. The recognition spread beyond Tyrellian space. Other systems heard about the brilliant strategist who prevented war through innovative thinking. She was invited to consult on other disputes. Her reputation grew, not as the Baron's broken daughter, but as Lady Lyria, the strategic genius who saw solutions others missed. Within a year, she was one of the most respected political analysts in the sector. Her consulting firm handled disputes across multiple systems. Her frameworks were studied in academic institutions. She became a galactic icon, her image representing the power of innovative thinking, her story told as inspiration about overcoming dismissal to achieve greatness. Baron Vel'thar was forced to watch his worthless daughter become more influential than he'd ever been. The cruel joke he'd made, giving her to a human as an insult, had backfired spectacularly. The confrontation came at a diplomatic function 2 years after that initial summit. The Baron approached Ethan, barely containing rage. "You were supposed to fail, to prove she was worthless." "I proved exactly what I said I'd prove," Ethan responded calmly. "That your judgment is worthless. You looked at your daughter and saw only what she couldn't do. I looked at her and saw what she could. The difference in outcome speaks for itself. She's still broken, still in that chair. She's still brilliant, still capable of things you never imagined. The chair is how she moves, that's all. Everything else is what you projected onto it." Lyria herself confronted her father privately later. "You tried to make me believe I was broken," she said, meeting his eyes with strength she'd reclaimed. That I had no value. You confined me, shamed me, gave me away as a joke. You failed to meet. I failed to meet standards that measure worth by physical combat capability. That's your standard, not the only standard. Not even a particularly useful standard for most of existence. She didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. Ethan gave me an environment where my actual abilities mattered. That's the only difference. I was always capable. I just needed someone to stop measuring me by standards I couldn't meet and start valuing what I actually offered. The Baron had no response. His daughter had surpassed him in influence and respect. His judgment had been proven catastrophically wrong, and he had no one to blame but himself. Years later, Lyria ran one of the most respected strategic consulting firms in the galaxy. She still used her mobility chair, still had scars from her injuries, but she'd redefined what strength meant, not through physical prowess but through intellectual brilliance and genuine impact. Ethan continued working with her, not as her savior but as her partner and friend. Their relationship was built on mutual respect and shared values. In an interview about her success, Lyria was asked about Ethan's role in her transformation. "Ethan didn't make me anything," she said carefully. "I was always capable, always intelligent, always valuable, but I'd been taught to measure myself by standards I couldn't meet, and I believed I was worthless because of it." She paused. Ethan refused to accept that judgment. He saw my abilities and created space for me to use them. Everything else was my work. But that initial belief, that genuine faith in my capabilities, that gave me permission to believe in myself again. And Ethan, when asked about his philosophy of recognizing worth, said, "Everyone has value. The question is whether you're willing to look for it using appropriate measures. If you only value physical strength, you'll miss brilliant minds. If you only value conformity, you'll miss innovation." The Baron measured his daughter by warrior standards and declared her worthless. I measured her by what she could actually contribute and found someone extraordinary. The difference wasn't her. It was our willingness to look properly. The Baron, who'd made a cruel joke, died bitter and diminished, watching his discarded daughter reshape galactic politics while he faded into irrelevance. The human he'd mocked became known for integrity and judgment. But the real victory was never about them. It was about a woman who'd been written off as broken reclaiming herself,